Listening to Toronto Today with Greg Brady on 640 Toronto.
We had to go tell our daughter that this was going to be the outcome. He was coming back. And she cried, and I cried, and you cried, and everybody cried.
Our son begged for help again and again, and this school did nothing. He was tormented daily, mocked with Nazi salutes inside the walls of the school. He stopped eating, stopped speaking, and hid in bathrooms just to survive the school day. This is a complete failure of duty and humanity.
The associate director finally contacted with Sue Dunlop. The experience was extremely unpleasant and unhelpful. She was accusatory, unsympathetic. She was rude. She was belligerent.
We were shocked at the school board's refusal to recognize the serious nature of this uninvited, unwanted, publicly humiliating attack.
How do you sleep at night? You're in charge of keeping our children safe, not just their education.
We would tell the board, the director, that they have failed.
Very difficult to hear those parents. You can hear the raw emotion, and who doesn't want to go to the wall for your kid when it's necessary? I know my parents did a bunch of time. My public school experience, I was probably rough on kids. Kids were rough on me. Inevitably, at the end of the day, there was accountability. If your classroom teacher couldn't solve it, you went down to the office. The principal solved it. I never remember a conflict with anybody I knew not being able to be solved within the school and resolved. You would want resolution. You would just want accountability, whether you were in the wrong or whether you were wronged. And we're lacking that in the education system publicly right now. I think we're well aware of this. So what do? Well, one parent has spoken out. You've heard him on our show before. And today begins a 7-part series called 7 Hours from broadcaster Anwar Knight. And he joins me right now. And you collected that complement of parents right there. And I don't doubt this has been an emotional project for you to work on, Anwar.
Absolutely. Very emotional. But I think this is why the Hold Schools Accountable campaign is so important, Greg. Parents' voices matter, and we need to start listening to them. Each family has their own story, their own heartbreak. And this is what the lack of accountability, lack of transparency in our schools sounds like. When those we trust to protect our children fail to act, and we have to note the damage doesn't end when the school bell rings. This follows families home. It harms lives, and that's why we need to hold schools accountable. We need to take action, and I'm just really happy to be here with you, Greg, and launch 7 Hours on 640 Toronto.
I mentioned it. You go through those evolutions where you remember what things were like when I went through the sort of K through, it was an OAC, obviously, with close to 5 years of high school. And that is my recollection is it wasn't exactly the Wild West, but you could inevitably, a problem would get solved because teachers, principals, anybody outside the school didn't want something unresolved. What happened? Where'd that go?
It has changed dramatically, top to bottom. And I think a part of this is the culture of secrecy. And that's why it's so dangerous, where they protect the institution and not our children. And we have to remember, they have an obligated duty. And then as a side note, they are paid extremely well. In no other publicly funded organization are they allowed to operate with the same secrecy, the lack of oversight or absence of accountability as our school boards. If this happened, the things that are going on now in our schools happen in the private sector, people would be gone. That's it. There are no questions. So that's why we're on a journey for justice. And one of the things that I was doing a couple of weeks ago is that I was a delegate at the Peel Council meeting, the regional council meeting a couple of weeks ago. And that featured all 3 mayors, Carolyn Parrish, Patrick Brown, Annette Groves from Caledon. But I want to make it clear to them, in this particular case, that the PDSB is the second largest board in the country, I should say. Mm-hmm. And it sits in Peel Region. So there's 146,000 students they have in their board. And these are families that are their constituents of this region. And all local leaders need to voice their concerns. So this goes across this province. If you're listening right now, you all need to be engaged. Don't deflect and say it's a provincial matter, because it is a people matter. Your people, the children in your community.
So we hear from Nando here, as you mentioned, Regional Chair, Chief Executive Officer in Peel Region. Here's some of what he said.
I know you are fundamentally right. Mayor Brown, quite rightly, and I and my colleagues on the board cannot tell you some of the stories that we know, but I'm not going to deny, and perhaps I can say this at 35,000 feet, that many is the incident where a school and its principal acts like a foreign embassy. He's the ambassador, he's in charge, you have no rights. What are you talking about? And you said it, and it is true. We have a protocol that if there's any incident of any kind, you have to reach out. And often is the time they don't, under our own protocol.
So isn't that interesting? And I think, parents, Anwar, shouldn't shape curriculum. They're not always right. I don't buy that they're customers that are always right. Sometimes the teacher does have more knowledge about what happens in the classroom. But I think his point is, to what we're saying, we desperately need more of that transparency, not less. And the scale has just shifted way too far in the one direction.
Well, and I think the two things that really stood out to me, because this is now on the record, it was a pretty damning admission. When the chair of both Regional Council and Peel Police Services says on the record that many an incident where the school and principal act like they are a foreign embassy, okay, that they're above the law, and then he adds, often the time they don't follow the police protocol. And that is significant. What you're seeing is that it is eroding the rule of law inside education. When boards or administrators don't cooperate with police, they are effectively creating a two-tier justice system, one for the schools and another for everyone else. And how can that be acceptable? And how do we function as a society? And make no mistakes, Greg, municipalities, circling back to why we went to the region, is that they inherit the fallout from these egregious violations. Wherever you live, there'll be more youth justice cases, mental health interventions will be needed, and strained community relations. We're all connected. Look at Toronto. We have 12-year-olds being arrested for murder.
Yeah, I want to bring up, we got about a minute and a half left, but we're going to do 7 parts of this every single Wednesday at 6:50. Michael Pileshi is a regional councillor in Brampton as well. I want to play this because he's obviously dealing with this as a parent. And again, parents will hear this and go, what if this was my daughter? Here's what he said in terms of a public testimony about what was happening. And he didn't get any response from the school board.
Told a story around here before, walking into the principal's office and seeing my daughter with blood coming out of her nose out of her ear, and then the video being posted on social media of her being attacked by 3 older girls in the washroom, and the lack of response, support, and anything that the school board provided our family and provided her, and the unwillingness to work with the police. The saving grace was the morons that did this. They posted the video online. I'll also let you know, when I talked about that last time, I made the assumption or the request that maybe we want to look at putting police back into school. That's all I said. And then I get attacked on social media, being called a racist.
And we're at 45 seconds, but I think that's the message to leave people with is there's a person of influence, a community leader. Regardless of ideology, if you're a politician, that's what you're supposed to be. And he can't get accountability, and he can't get answers, which makes it harder for the average Joe or Jennifer to feel like they can.
He couldn't get justice. So how many other families were denied justice and denied the facts? Minister Calandra has to move in and take control over this board, because if they're not going to be following the mandated policies, we've got a real problem. And if we don't have consequences for boards who don't, then you might as well rip up the policies, because you are not protecting our children. And I'll let you know next week, Greg, we have a real alarming show coming up, because a psychotherapist will join us and explain why the trauma for many kids doesn't end with the violent incident, but in fact, it also is how the schools handle it. It can leave lasting scars impacting their mental health in so many ways. And that's coming up here on 640 Toronto.
Completely makes sense to me. You can go to holdschoolsaccountable.ca. Anwar, till next week, thank you very much.